Good morning, everybody. My name is Brett Augustine, a recovery business advisor for North Central Texas Small Business Development Center, a leading provider for assistance for small businesses. We are grant funded, which allows us to offer these webinars and many other services at no cost. However, today we have Miss Ashley Cook at How to Write a Top-Notch Website and Copy, Part 3. And if you haven't seen Part 1 and 2, I've already put in the chat for you a link to go back to our YouTube channel where you can find parts 1, 2, and many other training and development series that have been produced over the past year. So I think you'll find something there, but to go back and see 1 and 2 for sure as we get into part 3 today. If you have any questions, please leave them in the chat room. Just chat it up and we'll be happy to answer those questions as we go. For those of you who don't know Ashley, she's the creator of Lane Copywriting. She's got 13 years of sales, marketing, and analytics skills that she shifted into serving small business owners like yourselves. And she also developed copy for multi-million-dollar brands, social media influencers, and small business startups. She's a copywriter as well as a copy coach. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Ashley Cook.
Thanks, Brett. All right, so we have made it through part 1 and part 2. Today is the final wrap up of our webinar series on how to write a top-notch website. So let me go ahead and get my screen shared and we will jump right on in. All right, so what in part 1, just to do a brief summary to show how far we've come and to encourage you to go check it out if you haven't watched or weren't able to catch part 1 live. In part 1, we covered the 10 critical pieces of a website, those must-have components that you want to make sure are included when you do write your website. How to start structuring your website overall in terms of number of pages and what type of pages, and then how to start bringing a structure into each individual page. And then I ended that part 1 with 5 simple steps for you to take before you sit down and write your copy. Now, part 2, we continued on and started going into some of the details and techniques around how to start writing for your website. I went into some of those techniques and strategies, also shared some 7 fatal mistakes to avoid that you do not want to have whenever you're writing your site. And then we wrapped up with how to create your copywriting plan for your website so that you can kind of start approaching it methodically and knock it out in shorter time. So today we're going to focus in on what do you do once your website is actually drafted, and maybe it's even designed, it's up on your site, it's all ready to go. You haven't announced it yet, or maybe you already have your site written and you just want to check and make sure that exactly like where does your current website stand? What is your current website saying? So I'll share with you a post-writing website copy checklist that you can go and look at or use for your assessing what your website draft is, like where it is, maybe some opportunity areas or spots you may have overlooked. Then I'll go into, so once your website is up and live, what are some of those crucial website metrics that you want to keep an eye on? What do they mean? If they're too low or too high, or they're off, they're not where you want them to be. How can you start to improve those metrics, especially from a copy standpoint? And then we'll wrap up with how to boost your SEO health. So we'll go ahead and jump right into your post-writing website copy checklist. Now, some of what I'm going to cover is familiar because I've been reinforcing it throughout this webinar series, and I'm reinforcing it for a reason. So I've written a lot of websites. I've done a lot of website audits for clients as well. And what I find is the checklist I'm about to share with you and what I have already been sharing with you are some of the most forgotten about or commonly overlooked parts of writing your website. So it's one of those where you may remember to do some of these things on the front end, but then as you get into the swing of writing, you get into the weeds, sometimes it's easy to lose sight of them or to forget them. That's why it helps to have a checklist on the back end just to help create that extra safeguard so that you can, publish out that top-notch content from the get-go and you're not like, oh my gosh, I forgot to include this really important piece. So I'll cover in on those. So if you have any questions, like Brett mentioned, please drop those in the chat. Let me get that chat box up and going here. All right. So your website copy checklist. The first item is clarity. So now that your website is drafted, now that it's already up and ready to go, ready to be announced to the world, go back through and read and make sure that your visitors can tell exactly who you serve on your site. That should be crystal clear throughout all the pages. Make sure also what you offer, whether it's a product or a program or a service, is visible and it's easy to read. That your visitors know where to go to find out information specifically on that. And then also on each of your pages, definitely your homepage, but also on your other website pages, that your headline is clear and compelling. It's not misleading. It's not hyped up. The industry term for that is clickbait. We've all probably gotten suckered into clicking the link where we're like, oh, this sounds so interesting. And we click it and it's like, that's a dud. That's not even accurate. So make sure that your headline is clear. It sparks that curiosity and encourages your reader to keep going. But clarity is quite important for that, because you want your reader to know, or your visitor to know, that they're in the right place. Relevance. So once your website is written, you want to make sure that what you're offering is something that your ideal client wants or needs, and that is coming through in your copy. You also want to check that how you present your offer is tailored to your ideal client. So we've talked quite a bit about knowing your ideal client, knowing their pain points and their dreams and their struggles and what it is that they really want, and how you can connect your offer into that. So that ties into making sure that your content is relevant. When we get into the metrics and I explain some of the metrics, you'll see how relevance can start to show up. If your content is relevant or not, how that's reflected in the actual website metrics that you can start to see on your page. All right, the next item on the checklist is your website copy and your website, is it user focused? Have you designed and written your words in a way that's centered around your ideal client? Do your visitors know how your offers, your products, or your services is going to improve their life, make their life better, solve a problem that they have? And then also, you want to make sure that your website is simple and intuitive for your visitors to find what they need. There's not much more frustrating things on a website that you can experience than not being able to find what you're looking for. Trying to figure out and decipher, like, what does this mean on the navigation bar? Is this where I go for this? And then you get there and it's not there. All of those are roadblocks that, if you think about it on like traffic. So we're North Central Texas. We are no strangers to traffic. Think of it as you have a big bale of hay in the middle of the road, and you've got to swerve to get around that to get to the grocery store or to get to work. All of those are roadblocks that just make it more difficult for you to get to where you're going. Same thing happens on your website. So you want to make sure and clear out anything that could make your user experience clunky, annoying, frustrating, because all of those people have very short attention spans. Visitors don't have much patience for that, and they can bounce. The next item is checking to make sure that your copy is benefit driven. So we talked a little bit about this with relevance, but what you want to make sure of is your copy translates the features of what you offer into what your features can do for your ideal client. It's really easy and more comfortable for us as business owners to talk about the features because we're familiar with them. We know, the specs and the details of how things look and how things operate. But to be able to translate those into how those features can improve the life or will make a difference to your ideal client, it's a little bit tougher because it does take knowing your ideal client. But that benefit-driven language is incredibly important. You also want to make sure that your visitors clearly know how your offer will make their lives better. So again, that ties into clarity. You don't want to leave them guessing. You don't want to assume that they know. Your website, your copy is there to connect those dots for them. So as you've written your site, go back through, read your words, and see, are there ways that I could write this clearer? Are there ways that I could get to that point faster? Did I translate this in? What's the so what factor? As you're reading your copy, ask yourself, so what? What's in it for my ideal client? What's in it for them? And then part of that is also having emotional-driven language in there so that they know how working with you or buying your product will make them feel. We tend to buy with our emotions and justify with logic. So making sure that you are introducing that emotion language into your copy can help from a connection and a conversion standpoint. All right, readability. We've talked about this a number of times, but you want to make sure that your copy does not just soar over the heads of your visitors. So you want to make sure it's easily understood, that it's free of jargon or unfamiliar industry terminology. The part of that is also making sure your sentences are clear and they're short. There's not run-ons. You're not packing too much into a sentence. Like you don't have a one paragraph sentence. That's hard for your reader to digest. And also it goes into making sure that your copy is formatted and error-free, that you run it through those grammar checks through tools like Grammarly, plagiarism checkers. You want to make sure that it's polished out so that it's as reader-friendly as possible for your visitor. Also, speaking of formatting, this is something that I definitely will do a check on in that editing round or before I publish. I will check and make sure that that all the copy on each page has been formatted. So that means sentences and paragraphs are short, that there's bullet points instead of like listing out bullets in a list, that I've italicized or bolded those key phrases. That one is one where you can use some discretion because you don't want a whole page full of like bolds because it can get distracting. So that one is one it's helpful. It's really helpful in blogs. I use it a little bit more sparingly, like on the website copy, but still wanting to draw the eye where it's important. And then using those H1, H2 headlines. Also call to action. So we haven't talked about this one a whole lot, but as you're writing your website, you typically will have one main thing that you want your client or your ideal visitor or your visitor or ideal client to do. That could be, maybe it's, if you're a restaurant, it's ordering food from them. If you are a physical therapy clinic, it could be to book a consult or schedule an appointment. If you're a financial advisor, it's, maybe a complimentary consultation or initial consultation. A realtor, maybe it's, reaching out and setting up an appointment with them. There's typically like one main banner, like kind of ask that you're going to have on your website. So that's called your call to action. It's that exact next step that you want your reader to take. So it's making sure on your site, whatever that call to action may be, that it's highly visible and that it stands out. A great way to do that is to use buttons that have a strongly contrasting color against your website. And buttons are really easy for people to see because they tend to visually pop, especially if you have that contrasting color. And you want to make sure that they're found in multiple places. So I've seen this a number of times where if you're on a homepage, for example, you have maybe a button at the top and then all this text on the page and no other button or no other link out for where they can go. So then the reader has to shoot all the way back up, or maybe they've gone down a rabbit trail into a few pages deep into your website and they're like, I don't know how to get back to, okay, I want to book an appointment, but they don't remember where to find that button or to find that link or that page. And so make sure that your call to action button is found in multiple places throughout your site, and then where appropriate, multiple places on your on the individual pages. And then also change up how you use the text. So it gets a little flat or stale to just see submit or send on buttons all the time. So feel free to play around with that. It could be some examples that we had from from part 2 where we walked through some different websites. It could be buy coffee now, or book your free stylist consultation, or give me my massage. You can play around with get your free roofing quote. You can play around with different text in the buttons, and it just creates something new and refreshing for your visitors. So it just isn't always learn more or submit. So feel free to play around with that with your call to action as well. All right, social proof. So social proof is that that credibility builder on your website. So this is one that when you start writing your site, this is one that can that could be that kind of like with the call to action, it can be overlooked because you're trying to write about your services and your offers, and you think, well, I have a Google My Business, so I have reviews there, or maybe people are raving about me on social. Do I really need it on my website? The answer is yes, and that is because different people will visit your site than people who will visit your social page or will check you out on Google reviews. You may have one person who does all three, but you want to make sure that that information is available in multiple venues. So Social proof matters because it creates that trust factor, because people expect you to be a raving fan about your business. So there's not as much believability there as there is a complete stranger or an actual client who had a wonderful experience. So that client or customer has more is viewed more as objective than the subjectivity that you have or you're seen as having as the business owner. So make sure your website has testimonials, reviews, case studies, things like that. You can sprinkle them throughout your pages. This is a nice thing to have if you like to do after you've drafted your web copy, is to go through and look, okay, where could I put in like a quote here or a quote there and kind of sprinkle them on? Or can you create your own testimonials or reviews page? And then that way it's a one-stop shop where it's just you continue to add on to that. I'm a fan of having both. So having them sprinkled through the pages and then also having its own dedicated page. And then when you do get reviews, try if at all possible, try to make sure that it includes a name, a photo, and their title. Now I have that asterisk because depending on your industry, that's going to affect how much information you may be able to give. So for example, if you're in the health and wellness field and you have to remain HIPAA compliant, putting a name or a photo could be problematic. So some ways that you could work around some of those more, some of those industries where, you know, confidentiality is those rules are more stringent. You could have initials, you could change their name, you could have a first name, you could just put who they are, like a young mother of two. I've seen that before where they have a quote. But what I would do is try to find a way to not just have the quote and then not have anything underneath it, because that, like, there's no frame of reference. It just doesn't, it's not as strong as if it has a name or some kind of descriptor of who it is. And then also on your site, make sure that it shows your certifications, credentials, any trainings, other PR. The About page is really great for those credentials and certifications. And then obviously if you have PR, you can put that in your blog. You can create a PR page. You can put it on your homepage if you want as well. We saw some examples, I'll walk through some examples in part 2 where there was a roofing company that had one of their like badges, one of their awards that they won, and they put it right up there on their homepage, which I think is a great spot to put. So go back through and check and make sure that those elements of social proof are present on your site. Fortunately, if they're not, they're pretty easy to add in. You don't have to do some major overhaul on your copy for that, which is also great. As you continue to collect more and more, it makes it even easier to drop in on your site. All right, so design and tech, this has to do with creating the best user experience possible for your visitors. So that's making sure your layout is simple, smooth, it's intuitive, they're able to find what they need easily. Your fonts and your colors are consistent throughout. That just helps to create more of a professional, credible source or website experience. Also making sure that your images are appropriate and they're consistent with your brand tone. There's a number of royalty-free websites where you can get free photo downloads for your page, like Unsplash.com, Pexels, Pixabay. Those are 3 options that you can pull down some download royalty-free photos for your website. And then obviously, you know, having a photo of yourself on there, professionally taken photo. That's all high quality, high resolution, things like that. Also from a design or tech standpoint, making sure that all of your links work. I'll explain why that's important when we get into the metrics. And then any relevant privacy policies, which I just realized there's a typo there, not privacy policies, but policies, because you don't want the police to come after you for sure, or any terms or conditions, things like that. Those are all included and properly linked onto your site. That is one tricky thing about spell check. So policies is not spelled wrong. It's just the wrong word. So spell check didn't catch it. And I can't tell you how many times I've reread this.
Don't worry, Ashley. It's totally okay. We didn't even catch it until you said something.
Well, I didn't catch it until just now, and I've read this page a million times. So that's why it's important to review your copy. Because none of us are perfect, and that's a great illustration. All right, so device optimized. This means that your website is responsive to different platforms or different devices, and it looks great, whether it's on desktop or tablets or your cell phone. So there's actually a tool I'm going to show you so that you can see how your website looks on any device. And the tool is free, so it's really cool. So there's a website called xrespond.com. So let me just type that, xrespond.com. And you just put your URL in here. And I just pulled one. There's a pharmacy in Denton, dentonprescription.com. And I hit load. And what it does is it shows how your website looks on a phone, on different tablets, and you can scroll down. So like right now, this has iPhone 5. So this is how how it looks on an iPhone 5. But you can go down and select. There's, all these cell phones. There's a tablet here. There's laptop options. There's desktop. And then you can always refresh it, or you could rotate the screen if you want to see how it looks if you're holding it horizontally. But then what you can do is just scroll through and see how your website looks on your mobile device. And it's really handy because I guarantee you this on a desktop right here doesn't look like that long of a paragraph, right? But whenever you see it on mobile, it's like, oh, that's a little bit longer than maybe I want. So maybe, you would make this into a new standalone paragraph. Or maybe because they're listing out cities here, maybe they create those as bullet points to make it more format friendly. So this is a really helpful tool to check how your website looks on all these different devices, and it can help you to know where you might need to shorten up your paragraphs or create lists. Or I've seen this before where the images will like fall off the screen, like it won't resize. So this will show you what that looks like, and you can get a bird's eye view across different devices, and go in and fix it before it's out there for everyone to go see. It's a really cool tool. All right, and then the last one here is on SEO, making sure that your site is SEO optimized. So it's making sure every page has a meta description, that you're using short and long tail keywords throughout your body and your headlines. You're using H1, H2 headers. You have enough copy per page that you're not creating a website copy or website page that's too slim. So those words may not mean anything to you right now. That's totally okay. I'm going to actually walk you through those definitions in the third part of this webinar once we get through some of those metrics. So this is just around making sure your website is optimized from a search engine perspective, so you can continue to rank higher on your throughout Google or Yahoo or Bing. All right, so this is a recap if y'all want to take a screenshot of that, but it's the checklist that I recommend before you publish out and say, hey, I've got a new site, that you go through and make sure that these different elements are all present and connected and all addressed for your visitors. All right, we're going to go into the next section. If you have any questions on that checklist, please drop them in the chat. Otherwise, we'll jump right into the 4 crucial website metrics for you to track. So now your website is up, it's going, you want to see how it's doing. There are many metrics to help you find out this answer. I'm going to focus in on 4 of them. And I've chosen these 4 because they can have such a direct impact on your conversion. So on each of these 4 metrics, I'll explain what they are, why they're important, and then what to do if you're underperforming on them. So some of the terminology that I'll be using is familiar for Google Analytics. So if you're used to using Google Analytics or you want to, this terminology or language will be familiar there. Excuse me. All right, the first one has to do with traffic. So this is has to do with the number of people who are visiting your site. So you can't have conversions if you don't through your website if you don't have traffic. And so said another way, people won't convert. People won't become clients through your website if they're not on your website to begin with. So there's no right or wrong amounts of traffic to have on your page, but the key here is you want to make sure that your traffic is increasing over time. So there are 2 different types of traffic metrics that you can look at. You can look at users versus sessions. So users, think of users as a unique visitor to your page. So they're only counted once in a certain time frame. So for example, let's say Susie visits your blog 4 times in a month. From a user metric perspective, Susie's only counted once, even though she was on your website 4 times. Now, there is another metric called sessions where that is counted, that number is reflective of each time a person visits your site. So if Susie's on your site once or 50 times, it's counted each time. So if she's on your site 50 times, 50 sessions are recorded for that. So those are two helpful metrics to look at: unique visitors and total number of sessions. Now, what I like to do, or what I recommend doing on this particular metric, is taking a look at it each month. But so you're looking at it on a month-to-month basis, but the numbers are helpful to give you an idea of if you're trending up or trending down or kind of flatlined. But where I think the power really comes in is when you overlay that with the content or the marketing efforts that you're doing. So for example, let's say you're tracking your unique visitors, and you see that there was a major spike in March, and you're like, well, what happened? What happened last March? And if you have that overlaid with your marketing or your content calendars, you'll see, oh, in March we had a major, St. Patty's Day promotion, and we had all this like content and marketing and different I just forgot the word, different promotion, a different event, or I can't think of this word, different strategies that are driving people to your site. So you have people on social campaigns. There we go. You have all these different marketing campaigns that are driving people to your site in March. So you see that reflected in your traffic. Or maybe you had a really cool blog that resonated, and you see that spiking in like a June timeframe. So overlaying these metrics and understanding what was going on during those times helps you to know, okay, here's what worked, here's what didn't, and it can help you start to kind of run some more diagnostics around, like a quick snapshot of maybe of how you want to be able to adjust. So it's some indicators that you may need to change things up from a traffic standpoint are that your traffic stays low, it never actually lifts off. Or let's say you're getting some momentum, your traffic is building, and then you start to see it taper or it plunges. It just somehow, for some reason, drops off. So what do you do when that happens? What do you do when you have low traffic? So a few ideas are check your content marketing. So how often have you been posting new content on your site, like a blog, or updating your promotions? And then or if you have a webinar, you're creating sign-up pages for that. How often did you tell people, like on social media or through your email list or in your office, to go visit your site for that information? So we as people have so much going on. We have competing priorities, competing attentions. We have, I know I have squirrel brain sometimes, where I have the best intentions of going and checking out something on a website, but then I forget and may not. And so visitors need to be reminded, your followers, your email list, they need to be reminded that you're putting out great content. Helps you stay top of mind, shows that you're providing fresh value for them. And it's also that little tap on the shoulder saying, hey, scoot over to my website and check this out. And maybe while they're there, they're going to look at other things too. So check your content marketing in your marketing strategies if you have low traffic. You could also check your understanding of your ideal client. So maybe you have people who would be a great fit or your ideal client, but they're not clicking on your site. And maybe that has to do with how you're asking them to go visit your site or the copy on your website. So if it's not an issue with you cranking out content or creating value, maybe it's how you're presenting that value to your reader. So maybe that could be adjusting or improving your messaging there. Another thing to look at if you have low traffic is refreshing any outdated content or messaging on your site. So if you have a promotion that stopped in November, your website should probably not still have that on your, you shouldn't have that anywhere on your site unless you're doing like a recap and a really cool, article or something that talks about that November promotion. But so as your events end, make sure that your website continues to stay updated. But for general messaging, I recommend looking at that a couple of times a year. And the reason for that is your business evolves, your ideal client evolves, and the marketplace dynamics evolve. And all of that, those three factors alone are enough to influence and reshape your messaging and create nuances today that weren't there yesterday. So I recommend going, a couple times a year and reading through your website copy and making sure that that your messaging is still fresh and relevant for your reader. Also, make sure your site is viewer friendly on all your devices. Resolve any of those major SEO issues. We'll get into that, some specific tips on that in a minute. SEO, if you have major SEO issues, that could keep your site from showing up on Google or people finding your site when they're searching for it on Google, Yahoo, etc. So getting those fixed can help to bring traffic. And there are different issues that affect that more than others, and I'll show you that. And then, of course, fix any broken links. If you're advertising a link on your social media and it does not take them to your website, even though you thought it did, that's gonna obviously interfere with traffic. Also, within your website, make sure all your links are working in your navigation bar, within your copy, your call to action pages, etc. All right, the second metric is around session duration. Now, session duration is the amount of time that a user is spending on your site. So if you really want to know how well your content is resonating with your reader, look at this metric because it'll tell you how much time they're spending on a given page or on your site. So the longer that people are on your site, the more information they're going to be consuming, the more that they're going to be taking in and absorbing what's on your site. So when you think about, if you look at and you're noticing that your session durations are short, that people are kind of going on for maybe like a few seconds or a minute or 2 minutes, but then they're leaving off, what can you do? This may go back to your messaging on your site. They may not feel like they're resonating or that what you're writing about isn't for them. Now, it could be that your ideal client is going on your page and feeling that way, which in that case, that's addressing your messaging on your website copy. Or you could have another situation where you're actually drawing in non-ideal clients, like poor fits for your business, and they're not resonating with your copy. And if that's the case, then that's adjusting your messaging on the front end where you're tweaking your messaging on those social media posts or your emails or your postcards or whatever your marketing language is to get them to your site. So some of that's understanding the different elements of messaging. It's the copy that gets them to your page and then the copy that keeps them on your page. One thing you can also do to increase your session duration is to get them engaged more, maybe they're going on your site and they're just getting bored by scrolling through and reading things. So include videos and images, integrate those and sprinkle those throughout your site. Keep it visually appealing. Multimedia is great because more people are wanting more videos. We're seeing that obviously on social media. Also, having it on websites can be a very powerful way to get your users engaged because they'll be tuned into a video maybe longer than they would skim through or read copy. So having both is helpful because you catch both different styles and preferences. Also improve your site's navigation. See if you can make it a little bit easier for people to get from page to page. And then also another thing, we've talked about broken links, but there may be opportunities for you to introduce links to other pages within your site. So one example of that could be, let's say you have your about page and your about page references like your portfolio. If you are an artist or if you have you're a service provider or like a copywriter has a writing portfolio, an artist has their painting portfolio, for example, you could link to that in your copy so that when people are reading your about page, they see portfolio referenced in the copy and they see it's hyperlinked. So then they click portfolio, then they go to your portfolio page. Before you know it, they go on your portfolio page and then that references client reviews and then they're going to client reviews. So all of that can get them to stay on your page longer because they actually their interest is intrigued enough that they're going to go click to those different pages. All right, the next metric is it's your ranking on SERP. So what is SERP? SERP is your search engine results page. So this is not actually a metric that you would see in a Google Analytics per se. It's not one that you can easily track in that way like you could with with your user or your session metrics or your session duration metrics. But your ranking on search engine results pages, that's where, for example, like Google would place you for a given keyword. So it's an indicator of how well your website or your content is doing. And so like the higher the better that Google likes your content or the more they like your content, the higher you're going to climb in rankings for that given keyword. So when you think about like how do you start to improve that, hold on just a little bit longer. I'm going to get to that in the next section. We're going to go into how you can start improving your SEO and start climbing up in those rankings. And then finally is a bounce rate. So what is a bounce rate? That is when that's the percentage of those who are leaving or bouncing off of your site. So I have a quick question for y'all, which is if you had a bounce rate of 40%, let's say like 4 out of 10 people coming on your site are bouncing. Is that good or bad? What would you think? Good bounce rate. I remember when I first built my website a few years ago, and I was looking at the bounce rate and I'm like, gosh, why is that so high? And then I started doing some research and I realized, oh, the bounce rates actually vary. They vary by industry and they vary by page type. So a 40% bounce rate is actually, according to like average websites, it's right on track with what an average bounce rate is. So 40.5 is around that average website bounce rate, but it does vary by industry. So like service-based sites may have a 10 to 30% bounce rate, whereas a retail site may have a 20 to 40% bounce rate. And then if you have a simple landing page, so it's one standalone product that you're sending people straight to, they don't find it any other way other than you're sending them directly there, that could have a 70 to 90% bounce rate. Those are some averages there. So you can see that it does vary widely. So what's important is finding your industry, knowing your benchmark so that you have some perspective when you go in and you see these metrics. I see this a lot with open rates on emails where business owners will panic because they think like, oh my gosh, I'm only getting like a 20% open rate. And I'm like, that is actually like pretty close to what the average open rates are on emails. But they think it's bad because we think everyone should be opening our emails. So understanding your industry benchmarks are really helpful, and knowing that there are total website total averages and then industry specific ones. But yeah, so if you have a high bounce rate, that it typically means that your website is not meeting your visitors' expectations. So what can you start to do? The first step is try to understand why they're leaving. So do a little bit of market research, ask friends or colleagues or those that may be good fits for your products. Just ask for their feedback. Their open, honest, candid feedback on what's maybe striking, what's not striking. Also check your messaging, especially in the headlines and top section of your site. So when people go on your page and they bounce quickly off, that could mean that there's an issue with the copy on your page, that it's not grabbing them or it's not relevant for them. You could also improve your user experience. So that comes from design, navigation, and of course your copy. If your website takes too long for people to load, they could bounce because of that. If your website loads and it refreshes and it kind of like is a little bit stilted and it shoots them to different parts of the page, like it's just kind of wonky, that could cause them to bounce. There are a number of reasons why people could bounce off of your site. So it's really important to try to understand why they're leaving, and then do some testing. You can do some A/B testing, test out a couple of different scenarios to see if that starts to improve your bounce rate over time. So some of this is a little bit, so marketing is always has this experimental element to it. The same with your metrics and your website. It's just an ever learning, ever evolving process. So, all right, so now we're going to get into how to boost your SEO health. Now, if you're wondering how can you start to improve your website ranking, or maybe you're not quite sure, you have a specific issue with writing copy for your business, or maybe you have another barrier or another issue that you keep scratching your head over, you're not quite sure what to do, I would definitely recommend that you connect with North Central Texas SBDC. You can reach them on their site at sbdc.nctc.edu or the phone number on the screen. They'll connect you in with confidential advising. That's no cost for you. They'll hook you up with trainings and resources like this webinar and other webinars to keep building your skills, strengthening you. Being an entrepreneur is like this ever evolving journey. And your problems today may not be your problems tomorrow. So they're just a wonderful resource, a wealth of knowledge and expertise to help you get through your challenges and to celebrate your successes with you. So you can contact them by visiting the site or the phone number at the bottom of the page. All right, so SEO. Before we dive into how you can improve your SEO, your search engine optimization, your SEO health, I want to ground in a few definitions. So I mentioned a few of those before, so I wanted to go into those a little bit more in detail. Some of these you may know, some of them you may be a little murky on, but they're important to in order to fix them, you got to know what they are first. So the first one is keywords. So these are your select words or your phrases that define what or tell what your copy is about. It's what you enter into when you go to like google.com and you type in a search. That's the words that you're using to find what you're looking for. So there are two types of keywords when it comes to SEO. There's short tail keywords and long tail keywords. Now, short tail keywords contain no more than 3 words. Sometimes they're called focus keywords. So an example of that could be cinnamon candles. So typically short tail keywords like cinnamon candles are a lot more competitive because there are fewer words and you're competing with a lot more sites that have cinnamon candles versus cinnamon candles in Denton, Texas. That is more specific. You're narrowing the field. And then that would fall in the camp of long tail keywords. So long tail keywords are 4 words plus. They're more specific to what users, if you're doing it by geography, so like cinnamon candles in Denton, Texas, only those in the Denton, Texas and surrounding area would probably be using that keyword, right? Or maybe someone who wants to ship one to someone they know in that area. You could also have long tail keywords like buy cinnamon candles with soy wax. So then that narrows your massive cinnamon candles from all these different wax types to just soy wax, or cinnamon candles, or buy cinnamon candles with essential oils. So candles are made with different types of scents and fragrances. If yours are for essential oils, you want to make sure to include candles with essential oils as one of your keywords if you're a candle maker, because that's going to capture those users who are searching for that specific phrase. So keywords will be a mix of long tail and short tail. You'll have them in your headline, you'll have them throughout the body of your copy, so that whenever people are searching for those phrases or words, it'll start to, they'll be able to find it on your site, essentially is the premise behind keywords. All right, H1 headers. So we talked about H1 headers before, but as a quick refresher, that is a type of HTML tag that is, usually it's the title of your web page. So it's when you're clicking onto a page, it's that big banner text. You usually have one H1 header per page. And then if you want to continue to organize your page under that, you'll have subheaders, which are H2s, or subheaders, which are H3s. But that's just a way to provide organizational structure for your reader, but then also for SEO health as well. Keywords are a great, or H1 headers, H2 headers are a great place to put in your keywords. So that's one tip there on that. All right, meta descriptions. Meta descriptions are a short summary that tell all kind of what your page is about. So I just pulled a screenshot of, I was on a podcast a couple years ago, and the meta description would be, so if I type into Google, I think I just typed in like Ashley Cook copywriter, and this right here, this text that's in the circle is what the meta description is. So it should give you a description of what this page is about, this page being the blue text that's hyperlinked that you could click into. So meta description is that summary. And then that blue text that is highlighted or that is underlined and hyperlinked is called a title tag. That is the title, often the title of your web page that gets shown on to the search engine results in that blue hyperlink text. So those are also really helpful if you have a title tag with your main keywords in that. All right, so those definitions are helpful. It's good to know you should have a meta description. Okay, fine. But how do you actually know what your SEO health is? So what I want to do is introduce you to a free tool that I love and I've leaned on a lot in terms of understanding my own website opportunities and the opportunities of my clients. And it's called Ubersuggest. So Ubersuggest is a tool that was created by Neil Patel. And if you haven't heard of him, definitely recommend following him because he's a New York Times bestselling author. The Wall Street Journal called him a top influencer on the web. He was recognized by the president as a top 100 entrepreneur under 30, back when he was under 30. I think he's like 36 now. He was also recognized as one of the top 100 entrepreneurs under 35 by the UN, but he's an SEO expert. He just knows it so well, and he created a tool called it's called a site audit. So what I want to do is walk you through that tool, and then how to use it, how to understand it, and then start giving some examples on how you could use those findings to fix your website. So I'm going to hop over to, if you go to Uber, let me just drop the link here in the chat. If you go to Ubersuggest.com, this is what the site will look like. You can create a free account. There is a paid version. So from a site audit perspective, the free will get you some really helpful foundational information. The paid, obviously, you get quite a bit more functionality, but you can get quite a bit for the site audit using the free version. So you can create a free account, or you can enter in your domain here and then hit search. So what I did was I just logged in on my website is currently being reworked, redesigned, rewritten. So it's in process, but it's still visible. And so I just ran mine through just to use as an example, which is great because right now it has a lot of opportunities in it because it's being reworked. So it's a great timing from that perspective. So whenever you log in, if you have that free account, you log in, and over here on the left-hand side, you're going to see your navigation bar. Now, this resource, I won't go into this today, but this tool has some really helpful resources in it. Like you can do keyword research, you can do some traffic analysis, you can do competitive checking to see, like if you're a life insurance agent, you can pull up another life insurance agent's website and see what they're ranking for, just to get some ideas for keywords for your site. There's just a lot of really helpful tools here, but we're going to focus in right on this site audit here on the left. So once you click site audit and you enter in your website here, you're going to hit search. Now, the reason why I'm not doing that part now is because it takes a few minutes to be able to, for them to crawl your website and identify those opportunities. It took like a few minutes on mine, but it can take up to 10 depending on how extensive your website is. So the results that come back are, you can export to CSV, so like an Excel sheet if you want to. You can do that throughout the whole audit, because I'll show you the different spots where you can click in. So this top portion on the dashboard gives you kind of an initial look at what your website is, kind of how it's performed. So they give you an on-page, like an overall SEO score. It's rated from 0 to 100. If you're ever unsure what any of these definitions or words mean, it was such a smart way to create this tool. You just hover over this little question mark circle to the right, and it will give you any of those definitions. So for example, on-page SEO score tells you kind of what their criteria is, what the score represents. So this score represents a combination. So it takes a ratio of the issues that they found compared to the checks performed by this tool. So your goal is to get it up, to as close to 100 as you can, because that means that you're fixing those issues, and that ratio of issues to checks gets, you just decrease that. So I have a 68 right now, and then you can see organic monthly traffic and keyword. These are low because I've changed my domain, I've changed the website, I've changed kind of everything, but this will give you like your snapshot essentially. They'll also say they've discovered, however many numbers of pages for your site. I do not know why I have 30. I think because like duplicates have been created, but that's a large amount for my site. But you'll get your total page count here. And then as you scroll down, it starts to break down what your audit shows. So here on the left, you'll see pages discovered. So they have 30 pages, and then they start to break down which of those may have some main issues with them. So for example, 16 out of the 30 were successful, but then if you look, there are 2 broken pages that are broken and 2 that are blocked. Now, if you're not sure what those are, again, you can hover over and see, okay, broken means that for that link, if someone were to click the link to that broken page, it would come back with like a 404 error or a 5 something error. But then if it's blocked, that could mean that the page is it's visible to people and visitors, but not to the search engine. So the search engine couldn't actually crawl your page and start to assign a ranking to it. So you want to pay attention to blocked pages and broken pages here on this this little left-hand block. If you want to see what those pages are, you can click this see all pages and it will show you that. So if I scroll down to the broken or blocked, I could see what those pages are and then go in and do some troubleshooting there. But what we want to focus on is this SEO section here, SEO issues discovered. But before I hop into there, there's one other little section at the bottom that I'll show you. It's called site speed. You can see what your load time is, how often or how quickly your page responds to when someone clicks on a link in your page, and then how actual stable your visuals are. So does it, does your layout like shift or shoot people to different parts? And then it'll I don't know why it's showing data not available right now, but it'll show where your results are and what color zone that is. And you can flip that between desktop and mobile just through here. But for this for website or for the SEO audit, we're going to hone in our focus on SEO issues discovered. So there are 52 on this website. And it'll give you the top issues here. So 10 pages have low word count, 3 with duplicate meta descriptions, 5 with duplicate title tags. What I usually will do is go in and click see all SEO issues, and it will show you a recap of all the issues, and then you can filter them down to critical errors. So critical errors are the SEO issues that you have on your site that are that may or may not be easy to fix, but they definitely have a high impact on your SEO. You'll see those are the ones that have high here in this far right column. Warnings are ones that are important to address, but they're not like set your hair on fire, you need to fix this, like the critical errors. So the warnings will be ones that may or may not be difficult, but they're going to have that medium impact. So, and you'll see here, because let's click into critical errors. So if you have more, then it'll show kind of your top ones, but you could, the paid version, or if you do a free trial, you can see the full thing, but it'll show you your SEO issues discovered. Let's just take 3 pages with duplicate meta descriptions. So the meta descriptions are those summaries that you would have on when you're that describe what each page is about. This says I have 3 pages that have the same exact meta description. So if you're not sure what that means or what you can do, you just click this button here that says, what is this and how do I fix it? And he walks you through what meta descriptions are, why it's important to not have duplicates, duplicate meta descriptions on your website. And then he gives you tips on how you can go about fixing that. Now, those don't necessarily get specific to your website platform. So if my website is hosted in Squarespace or Kajabi, doesn't give me those how-to, but I can go and Google how to change meta descriptions in Squarespace, for example. And then you could also look at, he links you to an article, again, internal linking is very smart, if you need help writing a meta description for your site. So, but how do you know which pages have the duplicate meta descriptions? Well, if you hit view details here, it will show you the 3 pages that, like this meta description is here, and I don't even know I had a store on here, so I don't know what's going on there, but this meta description appears for these 3 pages. So I know then I can go into my website platform, my website builder, and go and update the meta descriptions on these 3 pages, and then that takes care of that so that they're all unique. And then you can just back out and then go back to your next one. So duplicate title tags. So I have 5 with those on there. So let's say, I have 2 home pages right now that have a title tag of home, or I have 3 websites here that have the same title tag. Remember, is what appears in that blue hyperlink text on your search engine. I have this same exact title tag for these 3 pages. If I were to Google them, they would have 3 different links, but 3 different title tags. And that's not helpful from an SEO perspective, because there's no way for Google to tell the difference on those pages. And it's not helpful from a user perspective, because then if your visitor's Googling and sees those 3 options, they have no idea which one to click. So, so this website, you just work through each one. One tip to navigate this, because it can be overwhelming. I start with the ones that say difficulty easy, and because those can be pretty easy to fix by yourself. Now, some of them may have different levels of difficulty, like a high level of difficulty, those typically require more technical knowledge or expertise that you may need to have someone to help or may need to have some more time to dig on. But for the most part, like, they ranked, there's 4 pages without a H1 heading. I can just go into those 4 specific pages here and add an H1 header on those. Or maybe, I'm like, okay, well, it's a thank you page. Maybe I don't need one, so I'm okay with that. So this is a helpful tool for you to be able to go and see what are your exact SEO issues. And then once you go in and fix them or address them, it'll take a little bit of time for your website to be recrawled and for that to take effect. So I recommend doing this every couple months or so, maybe every quarter, so that you should start to be able to trend in that right direction once you get these issues fixed. So as I start to, if I go back here with these 52 issues, I can go in and fix a bunch of these once my web designer is done, and just go in and make sure these are all taken care of, so that when I go and rerun this in a couple months, that 52 will be knocked down significantly lower or gone entirely. So this is a very powerful tool that you can use to assess your own SEO health. There are other ways in here. You can also go in and see what you rank for on your keywords if you want to be able to look at if you need ideas for keywords, or you want to do keywords by traffic, so you could enter in your site and see what keywords are you ranking for, and then you can go from there and either do tweaks or create content that helps to bump those rankings up in the search engines. So any questions on the tool or SEO? I know SEO is a rabbit trail, a very deep well of knowledge and information, and it's one that continues to evolve as the algorithms change, as Google gets smarter. Google has evolved in so much in SEO to where it now, like before you could just keyword stuff and you could get ranked high, but now Google's algorithm is smarter, so it knows when you're keyword stuffing and it's starting to look more qualitatively at the relevance and the value that you're providing your client or your visitors and the experience you're giving them. So this is a little bit more of a technical side to website writing, but it can over time definitely help you with your rankings and bumping those up.
Sorry, you asked for questions, and I actually have one here on this. First of all, this site is amazing. I didn't even know it existed. But when you're dealing with all of the details of a website to make sure that you're going in the same channel in the same direction and all the SEO is fine-tuned, I was going to bring up the fact that, like you were just saying, Google and other search engines are constantly updating the way their spiders search. And it's because programmers are smart and they get around it. And, in the beginning, it was all keyword generated, pretty much. Now it's keywords and usability and all of the things you just saw, how many people bounce off and et cetera, because it's pertinent information or it's not. And the idea of these smarter spiders, is there a way? I mean, this tool, is it constantly being updated? I guess is where I'm going with that, because I know that as things change, do you think this tool is going to be something that's still valid here in the future?
I would say yes, and that is, I'll do the yes with a caveat. I say yes because I follow Neil Patel and his work, and he is constantly talking about the evolution of Google and the algorithms and SEO rules. So that tells me that they would also be updated, because he's all about providing like high value and breaking down SEO. So that would tell me that yes, they're updating this site, but I don't know. I've not seen or looked for the material to say how often is it being updated, but just based upon the high value and kind of credibility he has in this space, I would make the assumption that yes, this tool would be. And there are other SEO audit tools out there that can show, this tool isn't perfect, but it does really spotlight some of those major issues. So if you go, because I've seen where, I've run a website through another SEO tool before, and it's shown, different levels of information. So some of it, but this one is the most comprehensive one that I've seen. Yeah, that's a great question. If anything, this is a solid foundation starting point for it. But yeah, SEO is one. Like, I remember whenever I first started learning about SEO, I ordered a book on SEO, and I'm like, why did I order a book? Because as soon as that book is published, it's outdated, And so that's where I try to follow those who keep a pulse on this and are experts in this field and constantly providing new and updated content, because it can be overwhelming to try to wrap your mind around, because there's so many advanced techniques to get your rankings up, and there are people who specialize in this as a career. So this is just a foundational kind of 101
Well,
type of level.
thank you for that answer as well. And yeah, this is an amazing tool.
Yeah, I love it. I've even like done the free trial. I've done paid versions with him, and you can because with the free tool, you are limited to the amount of searches. So like this says 2 out of free daily searches available. Um, you know, for me, I've done the paid version before, but that's largely because like as a copywriter, I'm working with multiple clients and doing a lot of this back end SEO research, keyword analysis, looking at traffic, looking at similar websites, doing that more in depth. So that when I write, I can integrate that. But I don't, for an entrepreneur, for you're doing your own, running your own business, writing your own website copy, you can get pretty far with the free version. But if you ever did want to try, because there is so much with the paid version, he does offer that 7-day free trial to check out. So, but he makes it user friendly, and I love that he provides the definitions. In case your head starts to swirl and your eyes start to gloss over, you can see what each one is and the meaning behind it. And I've actually used this to create some trends on my own, to say, okay, I ran this in January, and here's what I saw. And then I went in and fixed it. And then I run it again in like March or April, and here's what I saw. And I go in and fix it. And so over time, you can start to look at your monthly traffic, what your keywords are ranking for. You can do your own keyword checks just to make sure that you're progressing over time if you so choose. So. And that's all. I wanted to end on the high note and end with the Ubersuggest tool. So if you have any questions, please definitely let me know.
Well, if anybody has any questions, please drop them into the chat box now. And Ashley, I just want to say thank you so much. What an amazing series this has been. And I'll have to go back and rewatch 1, 2, and 3 just to refresh everything a few times. But I definitely will be sending clients this direction on our YouTube channel. Remember, that's also in the chat at the very top. And happy to direct everybody there so that you can get more training. If you have any questions, please go ahead. You can either unmute yourself or put anything you want in there. Excellent. Thanks so much, Ashley. Yes,
You're welcome.
Hey,
Tempest,
Ashley,
you've been coming on.
Go ahead.
Hey, Ashley, this is Roger. How you doing?
Hey, Roger.
Wow, that was a lot of great information. That site that you just brought us to definitely made my head spin. You got a lot of information there to try to wrap around, but what an interesting tool. My quick question is just regarding websites. Sometimes you open up the website and you see a lot of movement, right? On, whether it's like a movie, whether it's, just cartoon characters or just visuals, like the picture moving in or moving out. What are your thoughts on that? Does that help with the visualization like you were talking about earlier on the website, or does it not? Does it distract? What are your thoughts on that?
That's a great question. So it's how do you actually present multimedia in a way that doesn't detract, but like actually adds to the user experience? And that's such a great question, because I've been on sites too where they have, the background visual that's like moving and going, and you're like, wow, what is this? So there are pros and cons to when you introduce multimedia in, and some best practices. So what I would say is it's if you think about that website, to use your example, like that header, like the moving video behind the header, it's making sure that I would say that it's slowed down a little bit, to where the movement is not fast and jarring and actually distracting people from trying to read or navigate the site. I would also make sure that there is a contrast created between the moving the visual and the text that might be overlaying it. So you want people to be able to read clearly like what your header is or that call to action button. One way you can do that is like, let's say you have an image that's moving and it's darker colored. You can create like a white box that has your black text, or as an example, so that you can kind of force that contrast. I've seen some sites where you just have the font overlay, like font sitting right on top of the video, and it's really hard to start reading that. I would say also that one thing to keep in mind of and to watch on, and this Ubersuggest tool does show that, is the load time, because sometimes like as you start to put more videos and more photos and some of those more upgraded elements that make it really cool for your user or your visitor, it could impact your load time. And you want to make sure that your speed is less than 2.5 seconds for loading, because people do get really impatient, and it's amazing how impatient. Like 2.5 seconds is not a long time. But if you think back to like the 1990s when we had dial-up, we were like, it took forever to hear that you've got mail, and then now we're like, we want it like instantly. So as you start to add those on, keep an eye on your load time. Keep an eye on that visual stability too, and that's on the Ubersuggest tool, and that's really how much your layout shifts and adjusts as they go onto the page, because you don't want that to be you don't want that to take a long time for them to load up. But I would say, as an overall rule, the more like if you can introduce multimedia in, that's always a benefit. But there is that balance of, you don't want it to be, I wouldn't have like the header with the moving video, or the moving kind of silent video in the background, and then like a welcome video, and then like flashy, shiny thing. Like, it's kind of a balance. I'm not a web designer by any means, but I know what overwhelms me, and that would be overwhelming, and like shiny objects, So
Yeah,
I hope that helped that answer.
No, that was great. Thank you, Ashley.
You're welcome.
Very good. Well, this has been an amazing series, like I said. If you're watching this later in life and you want more questions answered, please feel free to reach out to us, and we'll be happy to get you in touch with Ashley to continue this in the future, and she'll try to get your questions answered, or we will through her, one of the ways. So don't forget to go back in time there and see some of these others before. Do you have any closing comments before we go, or is there any other questions anybody else has? Okay, this has been amazing. Thank you so much.
Oh, absolutely. The only closing comment I would say, and it ties back to what Roger was sharing, SEO, nothing will make your head swirl more than trying to learn SEO when you're not familiar with it. And so I even though I've like been working in it for, a couple of years now, I still get really like, what in the world's going on here moments. So it's one of those where that's where the tool is really helpful, but it can be overwhelming. So it's focusing on making small incremental changes over time, not feeling like, oh, I got to fix all of these now. Maybe it's you start with checking your meta descriptions and making sure that every page on your site has a summary. And that's your focus. And once you get that done, you're like, okay, I feel good about those meta descriptions. Maybe next I'll make sure that all my pages have, a header on them. And I'll just go and check through. So it's taking baby steps and recognizing that this is definitely a learning journey, and it's okay for it to feel overwhelming, because it's a lot.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And that's good words of encouragement for everybody. So with that said, I just want to say again, thank you so much. It has been amazing. As far as everybody else is concerned, I want to just let you know there's even more things coming up. On March the 2nd, coming up tomorrow, Business Plan Basics with Rebecca Schultz. And on the 3rd, we have Accounting Lifecycle QuickBooks with Stacy Kendall. And if you haven't attended anything from Stacy, you'll realize quickly just what an expert she is in QuickBooks. She'll also be here on the 8th with QuickBooks SOS, Avoiding Common Mistakes. And Rebecca Schultz is back with Financial Bookkeeping for Businesses Funding Needs. So that's a question that always comes up, right? Everybody wants to figure out how to keep their books better. And Rebecca Schultz is amazing at trying to help us all with our accounting, and especially when it comes to taxes and things like that, some of the legal ramifications for all your small businesses. On the 9th, we have Hiring Smart with CJ Pettit. And we also have Stacy Kendall coming back with bank rules in QuickBooks. So as you can tell, we're going really heavy in QuickBooks as well, because a lot of small businesses really need to keep up with their books, and QuickBooks is such a common and wonderful tool to use. We just want to make sure that you're getting all of the right tools. And if you want to know about any of the upcoming things, use that QR code up in the top right-hand corner, and that'll take you straight there to sign up for the webinars, and we're happy to do that. Or you can go to the sbdc.nctc.edu website to register for webinars, or to schedule time with an advisor, or to use any of the tools that we have to help entrepreneurs and small business owners. We're happy to help. Please let us know how we can do so. We are grant funded again, and I'd like to thank the Small Business Administration, North Central Texas College, and North Texas SBDC Regional Office. And with that, I just want to say thank you for joining all of us today. Thank you so much again, Ashley. This has been great. I look forward to hopefully working with you again in the future. You have an amazing week, everybody. And this will conclude our webinar for today.